couldn't find them in the Bible. Yeah, yeah. But you didn't want to know that, cause all my pictures tell you that I'm good. That's a Kodak moment, yeah. But my real ones got me. I would never fold out, that's what the origami. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Drippin', that's the logo. I can't tell you I won't quit, but you already know though, man. You know though, man. You know though, man. You know what it is. I'm the only one bringing championship to the crib. Everybody else, you know, they trying to leave out the city, but I move back, so I can't take it over like get it. Building empires take time, that's why I'm patient for this. This might not make radio, cause there ain't no station for this. Greener make some people change up on you out of the blue. Damn, I thought you was my dog, I did not have a clue. Look, I know what these people want, so I just give them what they need. And looking at it from your eyes, it must be devastating. But I got so much work to do, and I ain't got no time for you. And looking at my future goals, and it's so amazing, amen. Yeah, and they gon' hate this one. Man, it took me like I must have finally make this one. I'm moving on, cause victory is mine, my son. It's Type T and High Ride, Bad Boys, Volume 1. What's up? Yeah, I was feeling suicidal, looking for the answers, couldn't find them in the Bible. Yeah, yeah, but you didn't want to know that, cause all my pictures tell you that I'm good. That's a Kodak moment, yeah. But my real ones got me. I would never fold out, that's what the origami. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Driven, that's the logo. I can tell you I won't quit, but you already know though. Look, I'm the greatest, it ain't up for discussion. If we talking the temptation, boy, then I'm baby ruffin'. Man, we did it on our own, nobody gave us nothing. And if your girl don't match your rhyme, then the deuces I'm chucking for real. Look, and ain't nobody does it like I did it. Point the biggest skeptic out, even he gotta admit it. Nothing you say can bother me, cause I'm my biggest critic. 2020's the vision, and I see it very, very look. Man, I'm murder beast, homicide rules I do not abide. Work Slippy J, I was raised different. And I got plenty problem 99, but they don't revolve around you. Why me do it? I don't need permission. And they gon' hate this one. Man, it took me like 9 months to finally make this one. I'm moving on, cause victory is mine, my son. It's Type T and High Ride, Bad Boys, Volume 1. What's up? I was feeling suicidal, looking for the answers, couldn't find them in the Bible. Yeah, yeah, but you didn't want to know that, cause all my pictures tell you that I'm good. That's a Kodak moment, yeah. But my real ones got me. I would never fold out, that's what the origami. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Driven, that's the logo. I can tell you I won't quit, but you already know the look. Hey man, you know though, man, you know what it is. That right. Yeah. Driven by music and T. Type T. Yeah. Like it. Yeah. Like it. Yeah. I was feeling suicidal, looking for the answers, couldn't find them in the Bible. Yeah, yeah. But you didn't want to know that, cause all my pictures tell you that I'm good. That's a Kodak moment, yeah. But my real ones got me. I would never fold out, that's what the origami. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Driven, that's the logo. I can tell you I won't quit, but you already know though, man. You know though, man. You know though, man. You know what it is. I'm the only one bringing championship to the crib. Everybody else, you know, they trying to leave out the city, but I move back, so I can't take it over like did it. Building empires take time, that's why I'm patient for this. This might not make radio, cause there ain't no station for this. Greener make some people change up on you out of the blue. Damn, I thought you was my dog, I did not have a clue. Look, I know what these people want, so I just give them what they need. And looking at it from your eyes, it must be devastating. But I got so much work to do, and I ain't got no time for you. And looking at my future goals, and it's so amazing, amen. Yeah, and they gon' hate this one. Man, it took me like 9 months to finally make this one. I'm moving on, cause victory is mine, my son. It's Type T and High Ride, Bad Boys, Volume 1. What's up? Yeah, I was feeling suicidal, looking for the answers, couldn't find them in the Bible. Yeah, yeah, but you didn't want to know that, cause all my pictures tell you that I'm good. That's a Kodak moment, yeah.
Good afternoon, peace and love, good people. I am Dr. Earle Fisher. I am the senior pastor of Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee, also affectionately known as the Blackest Church in Memphis and Shelby County. And I want to thank you and welcome you again to this week's edition of Ask the Black Preacher. Let me say a couple of things about this series or this event that we have now every Wednesday around this time. Let me also ask you to share this with as many people as you can so we can engage them in some wonderful and righteous conversation. So, Ask the Black Preacher is inspired by my dear brother, colleague, friend, homie, squad member, the Reverend Dr. Andre E. Johnson, who is the senior pastor of Gifts of Life Ministries in the Raleigh-Frazier area of Memphis, and also the associate professor of communication at the University of Memphis in the Ph.D. program that I received my Ph.D. from. He used to do this thing at G Life called Ask the Pastor. And so it inspired me to do something similar, and I ultimately adapted it. And now this is what we now know as Ask the Black Preacher. Let me also say that I am a black preacher, but I don't speak for all black preachers. I speak as a black preacher that is unapologetically committed to social justice and black liberation. Black preachers are not monolithic, so no one preacher could speak for all preachers. So I'm speaking on my behalf, and I would encourage other black preachers to speak up on their behalf. But I want to ask y'all already to submit any questions or comments that you may have so we can talk about all things religion, spirituality, social justice, black liberation, politics, and some more stuff. Or as Project Pat said back in the day, and some more things, you hear me. Let me also say I always encourage everybody to support the institution and the organization that are housed in, and in this regard, on this particular week, it is the Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church. So I want to thank all of my wonderful people for tuning in and joining in. What up, Frank Johnson? G. Joyner, the other half of the pastor and professor, TP Twice. Dr. Johnson is in the house. Hey, Pastor Pace is in the house. Tanja Ficklin from Benton Harbor, Michigan is in the house. Pastor Vincent Joplin is in the house. Minister Justin Johnson is in the house. Soon to be Dr. Lafayette Jefferson Jr. is in the house. Stephanie Myers. Queenie is in the house. Peace and love, everybody. D. Monet is in the house. Look, that song that y'all heard that I try to play as like the theme song to Ask the Black Preacher every week is Knodoe. Knowdoe by Memphis' own Type T. He did a video for that song and shot it at the Abyssinian Baptist Church, and I like it, so I always try to big him up. But I hope and pray that everybody's doing well. I got a couple of things that I want to, hey, Pastor DeLeslian, there's a couple of things that, hey, Sister Donna Van Hook, a couple of things that I want to put before us today as you all are preparing your questions or your comments. Hey, Lynn Rush, thank you again so much for all of you tuning in. And again, I hope that you would share this so we can communicate with as many people as possible. My Abyssinian folks have asked me to start doing some reviews, if you will, of Sunday's sermon during this segment. And I want to do it in the spirit and in the vein of what some of my sister preachers in the Dallas area that pastor the Gathering Church, something that they do, which is a womanist type of reflection on the sermon from the week before. And they call it Talk Back to the Preacher. So I'm saying Ask the Black Preacher at the beginning can always be about stuff that you heard me preach the Sunday prior, especially if I was preaching something at Abyssinian. So this past Sunday, I was doing part 2 of what we are calling Holla Anyhow. For those who are familiar with Mark chapter 10, I believe it's verses 46 through 50. There's a brother in that passage that goes by the name of Bartimaeus, who is recognized as a blind beggar, who is on the road to Jericho. He's in Jericho, not too far from Jerusalem, and he is sitting begging for money on the sidelines. And I've been talking about what it means for us to be socially distant and pushed to the sidelines of life, and how that may make us feel like we have to ultimately sit down. I've been talking about how Bartimaeus is not blind, and he is blind, but he is not lame. He can walk, he can stand, but he's not standing. The text says, hey, Gino Gibson, hey, Pastor Tracy, hey, Denise, my wife is on, y'all. It talks about how he is sitting, and I was captivated by that. So I've been talking about what it means for him to start off sitting, but ultimately through his public cry, his public outcry, or what I call his faith activism, that it moves him to getting accepted and embraced. I wouldn't say accepted or embraced, included in the narrative of black liberation that I believe Jesus is promoting and proclaiming. So I spent the week before last in part 1 talking about how he responds to God's presence, and that some of us, Gino, you crazy, that some of us have to be clear that one of the first steps in moving from what did I call it? Some kind of apathy to sideline apathy to frontline activism is to respond to the presence of God. Hey, Daryl Lewis, and hey, Shawana Bell, that we need to respond to the recognition that God is active and involved. So the scriptures say that when he heard that it was Jesus, he cried out with a loud voice, saying, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And then this past week, I talked about what it meant to stay pinpointed on God's power, because anytime you start off with some faith activism or some front lines activism, you can expect, Sister Tracy, don't holler too loud with what I'm about to say, but you can expect some fierce adversity. And that these people who are walking with Jesus tell this man who is on the sideline of life, trying to get involved, trying to be included, who is dealing with a form of social distancing, if you will, that he needs to be quiet. Shut up, man. It don't take all that, right? And so it's a shame how people who should be trying to help us, people who should be positioned to empower us, often are the people who pose the fiercest adversity for us. These are people who have been walking with Jesus, and now they sitting up here talking about, hey, Mr. Tamika, hey, Patricia Robinson. Now they sitting up here talking about how does the text say it? One passage says that they rebuked him. Hey, Joseph Reeves, what's up, brother? That what's up, y'all? What's up, Joseph? What's up, y'all? They rebuked him. They hushed him. They told him to be quiet. And then what I'm going to probably try to pick up on, I ended up with last week talking about he cried out all the more, and I thought that was inspiring. But I also, hey, Sister Teresa, I also this week want to try to lean into what it means for Jesus to tell the same people who told him to shut up to go tell him, I said, come here. Now, I'm going to piece through that some kind of way, but I wanted to give y'all an overview of all of that. And again, on these sessions, these Act the Black Preacher sessions, at the beginning, I want us to have some conversation, if you would like to, about the sermons that were preached the week prior. Or maybe you heard some, hey, Pastor Sean, and Pastor Sean, type something in this comment section about the conversation we had yesterday, because I want to try to expose the audience to the conversation that we had. Ain't it though, Pastor Kenneth Peru, ain't it a shame how people position themselves to be gatekeepers, adversaries of people who are trying to be included? We see this happening now, which I think gives me a wonderful segue into the second thing I kind of want to talk about, because obviously many of our cities and states, especially if you live in the state of Tennessee, are now starting to grapple with what it means for our states to be, quote unquote, reopened. And this could be a very dangerous thing. And I want us to be mindful of the gatekeepers, because the gatekeepers, the same people who would tell somebody like Bartimaeus, shut up, be quiet, don't worry about it. The same people who should be elected and appointed and empowered and educated and ordained to help you are the same people trying to lead you astray, trying to soften the blow of our voice. And what we see happening now in Tennessee is a rush to reopen the state, because people are more concerned with profit margins than they are concerned with people who are on the margins. I'm going to say that again. People are more concerned, gatekeepers, people in positions of power and privilege, are more concerned with profit margins, P-R-O-F-I-T, margins, than they are concerned with people who are pushed to the margins, or people who are living on the margins, like Bartimaeus was outside of the city limits. I talked several weeks ago about how Jericho is actually a one-day's journey to Jerusalem, that Jerusalem is the political epicenter where all of the resources are. But Bartimaeus is stuck on the side of the road in Jericho, not too far from it. And then now people are telling him, shut up, but I'll deal with some more of that. I don't want to re-preach it or preach too much. Pastor Pace, thanks for your comment. I'm going to read it off, or your comment / question. I'm going to read it off in just a second. Hey, Lewis Hurd, and hey, Zay. What's up, brother? I'm saying the people in Tennessee that are gatekeepers, the people who are in positions of power and privilege, are quite often, most often, far too often, more concerned with profit margins than they are concerned with people who are living on the margins. People who are living on the margins have a higher risk of catching or being infected with COVID-19. Not only that, we have a higher morbidity rate or mortality rate, which means we're more likely to die if and when we catch it. And while the state is calculating some of the highest numbers of infections since they started keeping the tabulations, at the same time more people are getting infected, they are saying we need to relax some of the social distancing measures. They're doing that because some of the corporations that have the ear of some of our highest politicians at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, they're telling them you need to get our people back to work, and or they don't want to have to be responsible for unemployment benefits. So what happens is if you open the state back up, now you put the pressure on the corporation, which is ultimately going to put the pressure on the employee. So if the employee says, I'm not coming to work because I risk infection, there are clauses in the PUA, which is the Pandemic Unemployment Act, or the Pandemic Unemployment something. And it literally says, if your boss tells you to come back to work, because the state of Tennessee is a at-will work state, which means at any time your boss can fire you without explanation. So all they have to say now is, I asked him or her to come back to work. They said no. So now they get fired and don't get access to the unemployment. Are y'all listening to me? Type at me, somebody. So what I'm suggesting is we have to be mindful of the gatekeepers. People who tell people like us who want to speak out, who want to speak up, who want to keep the most concrete issues, which is human life, front and center. They tell us, be quiet, sit down. They don't invite us to the meeting. You know, they don't include us in the phone call. Okay, so here's something that I am recommending we do that I think can be helpful. Then I'm gonna take Pastor Pace's questions, ask, class comment, and I see some more. And I thank y'all for your patience. Hey, Michael Green, and hey, Dr. Futrell. Peace and love to y'all. Thank you so much. Hey, Sister Lucille. Here's what I am trying to recommend. Right now, what I think we need is a bunch of data. A bunch of data that lets us know the number of people who have been laid off, the number of people who have filed for unemployment, and the average wage loss of those people. And I need the data broken down by state first, then do city or county, then do, watch this, zip code, then do, watch this, race. Because guess what I believe we will see? The people who are being impacted the most, not just medically with infection, but economically, are, say it with me now, I need everybody to type this in the comment section. I didn't do this last week, but I need to do this. I need to have a section every week where everybody in the comment section has to type black folks. I need everybody to type that, black folks. Type it in the comment section. Black folks. Hey, Dr. Hunter, type black folks. Black folks are the ones who are being disproportionately impacted, not just medically with the infection, but also economically. And what is going to happen is, and we've seen this happen with the SBA loans, the Small Business Association loans, all of these millions of dollars are going to be funneled through these systems, these structures, these organizations, and these institutions that will ultimately stop black folks who need the money the most from getting it. I can't see nobody typing at me. Black folks, come on, some more. Black folks, okay? Black folks. So, here's what I'm suggesting. Here's what I'm saying to y'all. I'm saying that, for instance, the city of Memphis, the Memphis City Council had a meeting on yesterday. They appropriated $10 million in a fund to help with the economic relief that COVID has caused on the city of Memphis. That is, as I understand it, not including the $113 million that Memphis is getting from the CARES Act. Now, I asked for weeks, where are those corporations that received millions of dollars over the past several years in tax subsidies? That means they took taxpayer money in a city wrought with poverty, and they got tax breaks to bolster their businesses. These would be the same people that would tell black folks, thank y'all for typing black folks, these would be the same people that would tell black folks, you need to stock up 6 months worth of your salary or your income just in case something hits. These businesses, I'm talking about the major corporations that are asking for money and receiving money, that didn't put up any money. They couldn't even last a month. They couldn't even last 2 months. But they tell black folks like us all the time, you need to, have 6 months and all this other stuff. It's just ridiculous. So I'm suggesting let's get the data. And the data should drive, just like the data should drive where we are getting testing, Joe, the same way that is driving where we are getting testing, it also should drive where we send the money to. Okay? So those are some of my preliminary thoughts. I'm sure we'll dive into some more. And I want to, at some point in this discussion, say something about what Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, a.k.a. P. Diddy, a.k.a. whatever his new name is, right? Talked about yesterday with regards to the vote and the black vote especially, and Vice President Biden. So Pastor Pace out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, my home state, says, in light of COVID-19, is opening states without a form of vaccine a form of genocide to our community? So I would pause using the term genocide only insofar as genocide, customarily as I understand it, has been much more targeted. This does not only impact black folks or only impact people of color. It just disproportionately impacts people of color. Which is to say, since people of color, for instance, in the state of Tennessee, I think across the state we make up about 13 to 15%. In the county of Shelby, we make up 50%. But we make up about 70% of the infections and the deaths. So it's not that we're the only ones. So it's not that we're the only ones dying. I think that it will have, this may help you pass the pace, I think that it will have a genocidal impact insofar as it will ravage even further a community that has already been exploited and on the verge of extermination because of poverty, political manipulation, exploitation, so on and so forth. So the other thing about the vaccine piece is the studies that I'm familiar with, the medical professionals that I've heard from and listened to, have been saying it will probably be middle to late 2021 until a vaccine is developed. Now, I want to be reasonable in terms of what it means to reopen the economy. I don't think that we would have to necessarily wait till a vaccine is produced, but I do think it's necessary that we ensure that all of the adequate medical resources in terms of tests, I can't say test enough, ventilators, I think the hospitals in Memphis and Shelby County, I think are stacked or stocked reasonably, but masks and other medical resources, not just even while we wait on the vaccine, that can help us continue to flatten the curve. But at the rate we're going, my objection, Pastor Pace, is at the rate we're going right now, we're going to open up too soon, too premature. I don't know how many cooks y'all got out of there, right? Got out there, but sometimes if you cooking something, you got it in the oven, or if you got it in the crock pot, and if you take it out too soon, it ain't ready for you to eat yet. And if you eat it, you'll mess around and get sick. If you got something on the grill and you cook it too fast or you don't cook it slow enough, right, then the inside of it is still too tender to eat. And I think that that's kind of sort of where we are with regards to COVID-19. The inside of our communities is still too tender to be exposed to a reopening of the economy. I hope that makes sense. Hey, Redbone, what's up, brother? Frank Johnson, the deacon at Abyssinian, says Mitch McConnell is trying to get a provision in the next bailout to protect corporations from lawsuits of people who are forced to come back to work and catch COVID-19 or die from it. Yes, I have seen that, Brother Frank, and it's ridiculous. I don't know how many of you listened to Frank Johnson on WLOK this morning with my Lemoyne College sister, Tawana Coleman. He did a wonderful job talking about redlining, what's happening in the Alcee Ball neighborhood, and how we can respond to some of the exploitative efforts that's going on there. But thank y'all for typing black folks in there. Xavier Wallace, my homeboy from Ben Harbor, says, can we trust the data though? I'm going to say that we need to review. I'm going to do some theology and sociology here. There is an approach to reading the scriptures, knowing that the scriptures, by most scholastic accounts, are what we would call divinely inspired, which means people believe God inspired the people who were doing the writing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that just because they're inspired that they are infallible, which is to say, for instance, I preach what I believe God has given me to say every Sunday, but that doesn't mean it is infallible, without fail, without error, right? And so a healthy approach to biblical material, a healthy approach to engaging sermonic material from a ministerial leader is using what they would call a hermeneutic of suspicion, which is you take the information and you interrogate it to figure out what's mostly true, get the best, or what Dr. Martha Simmons would call the most robust truth you can find. So in order to do that, you have to be suspicious. I didn't say skeptical. You have to be suspicious of the material, where it come from, who put it together, what kind of agenda they would have had. And so, Zay, I say that we should approach all governmental data or all published data the same way. I do not take for granted the brilliance and the insight of our ancestors who refused to buy what the government was selling with regards to the Tuskegee experiment or with regards to the Human Genome Project and Henrietta Lacks, right? Like, our ancestors know some wonderful stuff. And so to that end, I say we should approach the data that comes out of the World Health Organization, or that comes out the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, or that comes out of Johns Hopkins University, or any of that comes out of the Shelby County Health Department. Because don't forget, if you live in Memphis or Shelby County, don't forget the Shelby County Health Department seemed to be, I'm going to say, reluctant to put forth disaggregated data, which means data that is broken down, disaggregated by race. They did gender, they did zip code, they did age, but they didn't do race until people started raising hell about it. And so I'm saying that to say, I think we will get access to the most righteous information as long as we are engaged in the process of interrogating and looking deeply at the information that comes out. So I hope that that answers your question, but I think that that's a wonderful and fantastic question to ask. I'm waiting on, hey, Sister Stephanie, I'm waiting on some more questions or comments to come through. I hope that what we're talking about so far has been helpful. Pastor Kennebrew, I think your comment is that gatekeepers are more concerned with the profit margins than they are with the people on the margins. And you said that that's good. Thank you very much. I thought that you had a question or a comment first. Yes, Joseph Reeves. I also think that we need gloves, but I want to be mindful of the impact that gloves have as it relates to our medical safety, because studies that I've seen, medical experts that I've listened to, I'll try to list some if y'all need me to, because I'm not doing like y'all president do and just say they said, or people who I'm talking to. I'm talking about verifiable sources are saying that to have the gloves on, by and large, can make it easier to transfer the germs than it would be if the gloves were off. And so I think the way that they usually handle it in medical facilities is they wouldn't wear the same set of gloves throughout the entire day. They will wear a set of gloves. They take your temperature, they'll take your pulse or whatever, and your blood pressure, and then they take those gloves off and throw them away. Which means, unlike the mask that many of us can have on all day, depending upon the quality of mask, some may be able to wear the same mask several days in a row, so on and so forth, maybe even wash, I don't know. But that's a little bit different than having gloves, because then, Sister Patricia Robinson, you are to any of my medical health field or medical health professionals who are in the chat right now, please do make some responses about this. Only Brother Joe, Joseph, if we could, and my apologies to that misgendering of you, if I understand correctly, I think that's what I'm doing. So please accept my apology in that regard. But Joseph, only if we would have several amounts of gloves that we can use and dispose of very quickly. And look, right now, hey, Derek, what's up, brother? Right now, we can't even seem to get tests. I'm talking about testing, okay? I'm talking about testing. Testing, 1, 2, So part of the reason we see numbers increasing is because we finally see an increase in access to testing. That's so vital and critical that, I'm just trying to make sure that we keep that front and center as we try to combat all of this other stuff. So don't forget, the economic impact is tied to the medical impact. So where the medical impact is disproportionately worse, you can trust that the economic impact is going to be disproportionately worse. Reverend Stephanie Miles Lewis says, please tell your people to stay hydrated, take their vitamin D and C supplements, and please keep moving. Some of the latest reported deaths show blood clots, strokes, etc. Black folks may not have the classic symptoms of fever, cough. I'm not sure what SOB is, because what I think SOB is, I'm not going to repeat right now. Not that I'm beyond repeating it. I just ain't going to repeat it on this particular segment because I'm broadcasting out of the church's page, right? Hey, Drew, getting's good to see you, family. So what I would say to this, Reverend Stephanie, is comorbidities is the way that they have described it in the medical field, which is to say that COVID-19 has a more severe impact on people who already suffer shortness of breath. Okay, thank you, because I was thinking son of a, but yeah, shortness of breath. Okay, so I've seen a bunch of things. I've seen where people have testified that they had some symptoms and not others, and then some other symptoms and not others, right? Hey, Chandra. And I've also seen people say that they tested positive but didn't ultimately show any symptoms, right? But I want to go back to the comorbidities thing. Since black folks, by and large, are impacted with other health disparities, we disproportionately have high blood pressure, disproportionately have diabetes. And although this is not a contracted type thing, I think it's more genetic. But even when you start thinking about other immune system deficiencies, like people who suffer from lupus, right? These things have a significant impact on how the COVID-19 virus affects the individual. My point here would be, Reverend Stephanie, when we see that these people are disproportionate, let me just try it this way. When people who were disproportionately impacted by opioids came front and center, we sent all kind of resources. We didn't lock them up like we did with the quote-unquote war on drugs, right? We didn't lock them up. We gave them resources, economic resources. We flooded their community with money and facilities to help them to get treatment. So I'm saying right now, we need to flood the African American. Listen to what I'm saying. Help me, Holy Ghost. I feel something. Now, I ain't come to preach, but I ain't beyond preaching, okay? I ain't forgetting dialysis, Sister Reverend Patricia. Reverend Pat, I ain't forgetting dialysis. Look, we need to flood the black community that has suffered so much intentional disinvestment. We need to flood it with the funding that's coming through the state level. That's not what they're going to try to do, which means we gonna have, yes, Lord. Hey, Pastor Floyd, we gonna have to raise some hell to make sure that the money goes where it is needed the most. Right now, we are in a place and we have an opportunity to restructure and reorient how resources are allocated in our community. For the last several decades, lean in, I'm going somewhere. For the last several decades, the philosophy and mentality of most of our cities, counties, states, and the country has been what is called trickle-down economics. Give the money to the people at the top. They'll feel secure enough to invest in the people at the bottom. The devil is a liar, okay? We've seen a whole lot of that. It don't work that way. It has not worked. Paul Krugman, any other economist that you want to cite, 90% of the reasonable economists are going to say it does not work, which means we need to invest in the places where we intentionally divested from. To divest means to take money out. We have intentionally taken money out of black neighborhoods, black communities. We have intentionally bled black schools of their best students and found ways to send them in other communities so we could justify shutting black schools down. We need to invest, and it is possible. If your elected official, if somebody who was appointed by your elected official, if your pastor, if your parent will not admit that this thing has been done intentionally, systematically, structurally, they are either ignorant of history or insensitive to the plight and the pain of everyday people. Are y'all type at me, somebody? Are y'all understand what I'm saying? We will have to raise some help, because the way our society is structured and wired, people aren't going to naturally try to give the money where it should go. What we are going to do is try to, and this is why Frank Johnson's comment earlier about what Mitch McConnell is trying to do at the national level, I pray he gets voted out in Kentucky, and what others are trying to do at the state level in Tennessee, at the county level in Shelby, at the city level in the city of Memphis, is try to send the money to these organizations and these corporations that don't really need them. And then the logic is going to be they employ so many people. It's like the Ruth Chris and Steak Escape, or no, Shake Shack thing. So you have, the Lakers even got millions of dollars in small business money. No, I'm over it. No, and I'm not going for it. And you know what? It's time out to keep pandering and playing to people. I was on a Zoom meeting earlier today. It was the first what they would call a lectionary discussion. Lectionary, for those who are unfamiliar, is a group of scripture readings that churches reflect on every week. In some denominations and faith traditions, the pastor is expected or required to preach from one of the lectionary readings every week. And so this particular entity, the Southern Christian Coalition, a brother named Joseph Sherman out of Nashville, reached out to me a couple of days ago, said that they were working on some things in the Nashville area that they hope would be impacted, or that they hope would have impact across the state. Hey, Ursula. And he said that he wanted me to participate in this Zoom discussion. And in the Zoom discussion, there were two more wonderful preachers. One, Reverend Moore, I think she's out of Nashville, white sister out of Nashville. And, good God Almighty, I need to remember this sister's name. She was so phenomenal. She's a Vanderbilt Divinity School professor. I'm going to recall her name. I'm even going to put the link in the comments. A black sister who was phenomenal, and she was on point. And we were discussing what's happening in Tennessee. And one of the things that was lifted up was a passage out of 1 Peter that talks about what we now know as like redemptive suffering. And I said, somebody should ask Bill Lee what redemptive suffering he is dealing with as the governor of the state. Because I'm tired of redemptive suffering always being presented to black folks who know all too well what redemptive suffering is about. We've been suffering, and then Dr. Lord have mercy, God send it to me. Sister preacher who was on with me, she said, "Hey Kyle, hey Daryl Arbor." She said, "Hey, we've been intimately involved with suffering since we arrived on the continent over 400 years ago, right?" And so, we need to put the pressure on the people who are in positions of power. And I'm tired of people pandering to these folks. They go in and they're glad to be in the number. They're glad to have proximity to privilege and power. But the reality is this, and I say this all the time when I'm starting, yeah, Kyle, you good. I say this all the time when I start talking about, because now people are talking about what it means to be prophetic, or what it means to do social justice ministry. And I think it's important for us not to allow people to sanitize the dangers of social justice ministry. Social justice ministry is not some church growth strategy. Okay? It's not some ploy that you engage in trying to reel people in because you're acting like you're more socially conscious or more socially courageous than you really are. And one of the things that I often bring up is the prophet Nathan in the book of Samuel, who, when David had sex with Bathsheba and ultimately conceived a child after he had Bathsheba's husband killed, okay, the prophet Nathan is in David's kingdom, in his quarters, having a conversation with him, and he starts to tell him a story. So I tell preachers, hey, you're not a prophet just because you're having a conversation with the king, because you're in close proximity with the king. You're not a prophet simply because you can tell the king an entertaining story. You're not a prophet unless you are willing to confront the king and tell the king, thou art the man, which is to say, you guilty of some stuff that you need to be held accountable for. So I'm saying, if you can't get accountability out of the people who you have relationship with now, what's the purpose of the relationship? And I mean that. Hold me accountable. Listen, hold me accountable. If you're in a relationship with me and you think I have some access to some privileges and some power, and if I don't tilt it to the benefit of the people, hold me accountable too. I'm sick and tired of this. We're in a strange space. If we don't renegotiate, if we don't reorganize and reorient ourselves, if we can't get this done now, I don't see it happening in this generation. If we can't get our people the resources we need now, then I don't think, Pastor Courtney, that I don't think we're going to get it done. Pastor Floyd, I'm trying to read what you're saying in his quarters. Yeah, he was in the king's quarters. Yeah, right. So this is the time, brothers, sisters, friends, and kin. And it leads me to, because I don't think I see any questions. I see some comments. Thank you, Joseph, for your comments, and Sister Teresa for your comments, Sister Ursula for your comments. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. And please do, submit any questions or comments that you want to share. Hey, Darius. Hey, Chris Brown. Hey, Sister Desiree. It leads me to this conversation that Puffy was having with Naomi Campbell. I haven't seen the entire 45-minute clip, but I did see the segment where Puffy is talking about Joe Biden and what Joe Biden needs to do for black folks and what he needs to put on the table. Hey, Sister Pam, what he needs to put on the table for black people before he gets the black vote. And I know he's going to get some pushback. Angela Rye was doing an Instagram live earlier. I was trying to tune into that. Couldn't get, I was trying to prepare for this, tune into that, listen to the Puffy thing, and so I couldn't do it all. But, she said she agreed with about 85% of what Puffy said. I'm saying on his face, I can't see what's wrong with that other than we are so accustomed to giving away. Look, people aren't in positions of power because God ordained them to be that. Sometimes people are in positions of power because we haven't exercised our own. We haven't organized our own. So they seized the power. There is a such thing as ungodly power. Now you're going to tell me that God ordained ungodly power? I'm going to say hell to the no. What I'm going to say is certain things. Geno Gibson, who was on this thing, if you're still on here, big homie, chime in and say something. I heard him say something several years ago, stuck with me ever since. He says some things are God ordained and other things are God allowed. So God will allow there to be ungodly power. You can't pay me to believe God ordained the brother in the White House right now. Absolutely not. It's too many lives being lost at his behest. Thank you for your question, Kyle. I'm going to read it in a second as soon as I try to finish this thought off. So Puffy is saying Joe Biden or nobody else should get the black vote without making a sincere, concrete commitment that they can be held accountable to on behalf of the people whose votes they are lobbying. Okay? So we don't have to give our vote to anybody. Everybody should have to earn your vote. So, I know people, matter of fact, and some of the people who are on the thread that I'm in solid relationship with, we've had conversations. And I've said, look, I might not agree with who you voted for, but I can understand why you voted for them because they put something on the table for you in your community, and you felt like they either were committed to it or followed through on it. Okay? So even if somebody votes against somebody who if you vote for somebody who I don't think you should vote for, you can still have a logical, rational explanation which says I voted for this person for this reason. They gave me something. Puffy is asking for people to have to defend what they have given us in order to get our vote. Now, he said that he was willing to hold the vote hostage. I'm not sure what he means by that. I'd like to know. But above all of that, I'm going to say, I'm not one to say the vote should be held hostage. I think we do enough voter suppression as it is. I would like for us to commit to voter education. If y'all know anything about Up the Vote 901, then you should know we have been committed to giving more power, information, and representation to more people and increasing voter turnout in every election. We still committed to that. We got some events coming up that y'all will hear about over the next few weeks as we continue to try to reorganize and restructure during this time too. But the bottom line is this. Yes, people should have to work and make good on their promises in order to get our votes. Because when they don't, we see what we see now. We see deals being made on behalf of corporations, organizations, institutions, and individuals who do not have our best interests at heart. You got to make these investments. You got to make these investments in the black man. I want people to say this wholeheartedly and robustly. Make the investments in the black community. That's the community that's been disinvested from. Kyle Stevenson says, what's the best way to hold officials for preachers? I'm going to see if I can understand what you were trying to say on the latter part. Because a lot of times our prophetic sermons that speak truth to power, and the power is not there. Well, I would say this. And dog, I feel so bad because I can't remember the sister preacher's name, and she was so powerful to me. She talked about how she echoed something that I've tried to say before, and that is, hey, Miss Isom, hey, Reverend Allison, hey, Ricky Wilkins, hey, brother, what's up, Fi? She said that we don't just speak truth to power, we speak truth with power. And I say, we speak truth to empower. So the idea that the people who have power, I agree with you, Kyle, insofar as so often we call ourselves speaking truth to power, but the power is insular power, power within. See, but we won't speak truth to the power, what the New Testament writer called the spiritual wickedness in high places. So I think you're right. And I've been trying for the last several months now, probably over a year. Whenever Aretha, hey, Cleve, what's up? Hey, Corey. I've been trying to get us to understand the difference between socially conscious preaching and conversation, people who know what's going on in the community, and socially just or prophetic preaching and proclamation. Because these ain't the same things. Because you're not doing social justice or prophetic preaching if you're not addressing the power dynamics at work in the community and within the context of the community of the scripture. Our womanist scholars are wonderful at doing this and very helpful in that regard. So you can't hold an elected official accountable unless you can threaten voting them out of office. That's the only way, which means we could talk till we blue in the face and we could be right. We could be telling the truth. But that doesn't mean you're going to be able to hold somebody accountable unless, look, I wanted to hold Mayor Strickland accountable for his record. We didn't succeed in doing it because we didn't have a base big enough. He had $1 million war chest. So, and now we are reaping the benefit of, for better or worse, and I'm looking for some righteous journalists to go line by line, comment by comment, commitment by commitment, legislative policy after legislative policy, engage every elected official. Put their record up and let's see. Because I'm saying we are getting what we asked for. The people of Memphis re-elected Mayor Strickland by overwhelming margin. Okay? Which means he in this office until this term is up. And we are, for lack of better terms, stuck with his leadership. That does not mean I think everything that he has done has been inadequate. He has done some things well. I'm glad that he didn't try to reopen at the same rate as some of the other counties, right? I'm glad that he's pushing it back, trying to buy himself some time. He did come out and try to I'm glad that he issued the stay-at-home order. I said that. He does have a task force that he has put together. Now, I think that the task force is rather lopsided and tilted against like labor organizations or everyday people and employees. That's me. I could be wrong about that. But at the end of the day, Kyle, we couldn't get him out of office because we didn't have the numbers. Now, there were some elected officials who we did get out of office. Hello, somebody. There were some elected officials who simply did not cut the mustard. They were leaving black folks in our community on the chopping block, and they had no remorse about it. And I'm glad that they are no longer in office. And to be very clear, we're trying to organize some more numbers and some more people to get more of the people out of office. And I think that's the only way you're going to be able to hold people accountable. You have to meet force with force. And so, obviously, we ain't going to be able to outspend folks because they got the corporations, the special interest group, the way that the social and the political infrastructure is put together, as I've been talking about for the longest, is tilted to give the resources, our tax dollars, to people who are already privileged and in power. So, you're going to have to out-organize them. You can't outspend them. Matter of fact, speaking of outspending, where the hell is Bloomberg. Y'all need to type at me. Say something. Hey, Tierra. Say something. I need to take somebody else. Where's Bloomberg? Now, he might be out here. Maybe I'm missing it. I know he's sending a reporter to the White House all the time. I got that. But, man, that man spent $500 million in a month and a half trying to run for office and get some votes. Man, we got 100. This is ridiculous. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it at the national level. I'm sick of it at the state level. I'm sick of it at the local level. And for the record, black folks been holding the country together by the seams for the longest. And it's about time that we get the reparations we deserve. And by that I mean, this is a wonderful time. This money that is being put up to protect people's lives, even as governors all over the country are making decisions that will put people's lives at risk. This money needs to go to black communities and black folks. And I'm not talking about black folks that most effectively mimic and emulate white business practices. I'm talking about black folks on the ground. I'm talking about black organizations who have been doing the work and making the impact. You know, I said something about money earlier, even in the electoral process. Yo, you know, Up to Vote 901 has done what we have done with no money. You know, I can imagine, and I'm going to be very clear. I'm not asking for $1 million for Up to Vote. I send it. I trust that we're going to put it to good use, and there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to change around these parts. But I'm not asking for it. It don't have to. We're not the only ones doing good work. There are people who are doing good work on the ground in Memphis and in Shelby County and in St. Louis. Let me salute. Somebody tag him. I know Joseph, you, Kyle. I don't know if Pastor Tracy is still on here. Tag my dear brother Starsky Wilson and the Deaconess Foundation out of St. Louis. They doing some righteous work. That's what I think philanthropy needs to look like. You know, they are, as best as I know, and I trust Starsky. I'd go to bat for that brother. I'd fight with that brother. I'd go to war with Starsky Wilson, okay? That's my brother. Matter of fact, at my best, I'm just a Starsky Wilson. I'm a broke Starsky Wilson in Memphis. I'm a low budget Starsky Wilson. Y'all tell him I said that. Hey, Derek Patterson. Y'all tell him I said I'm a low budget Starsky Wilson. You know, as best as I know, they are putting their resources where it is needed the most to make sure that the people who are doing the work are financially, fiscally, and politically supported. I respect that. I wish there were more people in Memphis doing that. I've asked, listen to what I'm about to tell you. I've asked every news station, every interview. I've been on interview with Channel 5 in the last 2 months, been on an interview with Channel 13 the past few months, been on Local 24, been on WREG, Channel 3 past few months. I'm talking just about every major media outlet in the city. I've asked everybody to ask the corporations that have received tax subsidies from the citizens in Memphis and Shelby County to show their record of how they are investing in the community when we are in need the most. Nobody has ran that story. Nobody has ran that story. I had one governmental official, somebody who was appointed, who I respect. And the sister told me about some of the organizations. She said some choose to remain anonymous. But look, I'm telling you, there are scores of organizations. Memphis Tomorrow, what's up? Memphis Chamber of Commerce, what's up? You know, I can applaud and appreciate what the Office of Business, Diversity, and Inclusion and Joanne Massey is doing at the city level. I know that they're doing something. I don't have a vantage point right now to say if what they're doing is enough. I know that they're doing something. But I'm not just talking about government entities. I'm talking about private business who every time they want to do a building project, they ask us for some money and the city give it to them or the county give it to them. You know, hey, Elvis Presley Enterprises, what's up? AutoZone, what's up? FedEx, put your receipts up. And look, I'm not saying that they're not doing nothing. I'm saying we don't know. And we should know. We should know right now where everybody stands. Because if you haven't heard from anybody in this space, chances are they ain't looking out for the people who they should look out for. So, you know, that's really all I don't want to prolong this any longer. You know, we've been at this thing for 50 minutes. You know, I appreciate all of y'all. here's what I'm going to say. Here's my unapologetic picture. And I don't really usually do this, and I sure enough don't do it well. But I know what Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church is committed to. And so I'm asking everybody who was in here, several people. I copied something that my friend and brother, Danny Tay Jennings, Coach Tay, put up, and several people sent, $2, $5, $10, $20 to me. I deeply appreciate it, man. That's a blessing to a brother like me who works for a church that, is holding itself together by the economic seams. And in this environment where, people are struggling, obviously some of our financial resources are, hey, Sister Pip, some of our financial resources are strapped to send some money to listen to what I'm about to tell you. I want to be very clear. I'm clear about this. I feel this in the bottom of my soul. If Abyssinian Baptist Church had half of the budget of some of these other churches, you would see a major shift in the city of Memphis. If Abyssinian Baptist Church I know churches that may be 4 or 5 times our size, that got 10 times our budget, that probably ain't making a quarter of the impact that Abyssinian is making in the lives of everyday people. I'm telling you, Abyssinian Baptist Church is a good place to send your money, send your resources, send your people. Okay? Look, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for the conversation. I'm not going to hold on to this any longer. What I want to do is make sure that you all are invited to our Sunday service, 10 o'clock here in the same place. So this Sunday I'll be preaching part 3 of Holla Anyhow. I'll be trying to wrap that sermon up. So I want y'all to come and check it out. If you have not, let me also celebrate that Abyssinian Baptist Church reached over 2,000 followers over this past week. The group Solar Black Preaching that I started after the Aretha Franklin funeral. Brother Kyle, to go back to what you and Joseph have been talking about. Thank you, Brother Ricky Wilkins. I started that group to talk about the difference between socially conscious preaching and socially just preaching. Man, I wish I could have let y'all eavesdrop on the conversation that I had with Reverend Dr. Kenyatta Gilbert last night about prophetic preaching and stuff like that. We were talking on the phone, talking through my pastor, Dr. Frank Anthony Thomas' latest book, How to Survive a Dangerous Sermon. Look, I'm just saying to y'all, thank you, Teresa. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Support Abyssinian. Do me a favor again. Share this. I'm going to go through the comment section and try to respond to as many comments as I can. But beyond that, I hope to see y'all Sunday. If not, I will definitely see y'all next week. This time, the same time, at this same place for Ask the Black Preacher. Peace and love.